Well, welcome to A Journey on My Mind. We have a special guest with us today. Robert is joining us.
Rob.
You're welcome.
Rob.
I'm here.
Partly of what we're talking about today does fit into a little bit into his venue of working with teenagers. Some deconstruction work today. We're going to talk about the psychology of and the
Origins?
No origins. We're going to probably talk more about what's involved with deconstruction. But before we do that, it's always good for the two listeners on YouTube to get to know us a little bit better. And I was gonna, Dave had this idea. What about your childhood do you not have anymore? Is not part of your life anymore that you miss the most? Because I think curiosity is part of that. So here's mine. I'll tell you. I'll set you up. So I grew up in a place. Where water sports was a big deal. We went.
Oh yeah.
We went water skiing all the time. We went fishing all the time, and lakes were an every summer occurrence. And in the winter, we broke the ice and we fished.
Yeah.
So dumb. But I miss water skiing and boating and canoeing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not in your life at all.
Mm-mm. It's done. Yeah. I mean, I would pick it up again, but it's just.
You ever been a Percy Priest?
Yeah, we've got some places you can actually do that.
All right,
here,
you guys.
Rob.
You can't ice fish there.
I called you Rob. Kevin. I heard his voice.
I'm over
if
here.
you can't ice fish, what's the point?
How many times have you heard that?
There's actually,
Have you ever been ice fishing?
Like the famous saying goes, if you can't ice fish.
Have you ever been ice fishing?
I don't think I have been ice fishing.
Wow, guys.
Been fishing a lot.
That sounds dangerous.
Could be if you're stupid about it, sure.
Well, I'm not the brightest when it comes to
generally
ice fishing.
speaking, it's
Look at who
pretty
you're
safe.
talking to.
It's pretty safe. I don't know what's worse, sitting in a boat on a lake that you could fall out of, or standing on ice with a little hole in the ice that
Both are equally dangerous.
You think so?
No,
you think B?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you ever fall in that hole,
there's no getting.
if you fall in the hole, how do you get out?
Yeah.
If you fall in the hole,
you're in
you've
trouble.
had too much to drink.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's how you know.
That's not.
So there's probably stories
The
around
hole
that
is not
too.
that big.
I mean,
So
see, a boat keeps you
anyway,
in.
Dave, do you have something from your childhood that's no longer?
Well, I don't know that I'd say this is something I miss terribly. But something that was a big part of my childhood was baseball.
Oh yeah.
So I played baseball for 8 years, and I will first say I would give myself a 53rd percentile baseball player.
Okay.
Above middle.
No, maybe 47th percent. It's like in the brackets, like dead average.
48.
Yeah.
Like there are people on the team clearly better.
Yeah,
people clearly worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I played for 8 years.
That's
And my dad was a baseball coach. He was a batting coach. My brother played baseball into his adulthood.
Wow.
And I was 16, and I was on this team, and the coach was just horrible. I mean, just like a horrible, not just bad coach, just horrible,
Just
like
a mean-
alcoholic, mean, cuss you out.
Walter Matthau.
Yeah. And so
Bobby Knight.
I just hated it. Right. I hated it.
I feel like every coach back then was
I told my
News
parents
Bears.
that I thought they were going to push back. I said, I just hate this. I want to quit the team. And I thought they were going to give me the, you don't quit the team, once you're on the team, that kind of thing.
We
They're
get
like,
it.
yeah, sure.
Okay. We get it.
And that was the end of it.
Wow.
But I think had I not had that guy as a coach, I probably would have played a few more years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And gone to a D. Is there D4? A D4 school for baseball. That's intramurals.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, there's NCAA. That's what ours was. National. What is it? National Christian College.
Oh, right.
You know, like
that's
smallest division.
I played baseball in college.
You did?
Yeah, intramurals.
Oh yeah.
Intramurals.
Okay.
Yeah.
That just means real star.
That just means
bro.
you attended college.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
That's right.
Also
It means
I
you showed
played
up.
basketball in college too.
Me too.
That's like somebody.
Me too. Then yeah.
Somebody told me, this is random, but somebody said I was a swimmer in college, and we looked at this person, like me and my wife were like, really? And he's like, well, I was in swim class in college. I'm like, that's not the same thing.
I was a bowler in college then too.
Yeah.
My PE
I was
credit-
too. I bowled in college.
We had to have it
one
for
of
our
the PE
PE
classes.
That was my
so
PE
good.
It was. You did it too.
Bowling,
Look,
yep.
Oh.
This is the lazy bunch here.
Golf. I had golf class.
I didn't.
It was great. I got credit for going to the golf course. I'm in.
Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
beat that.
Come on.
That's a good day.
Yeah.
So, growing up, I think the thing that I miss the most is like my grandpa had a huge farm, about a 3,000 acre operation that we were all, I mean, it was,
That's gigantic.
yeah, it was monstrous.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's That's not a farm.
Kind of
That's
Indiana.
something
Yeah,
else.
it's a ranch.
It is Indiana.
He raised Angus cows and corn and beans. You know,
There
that's
it
what we
is.
do there.
That is the most
But
Indiana thing
I
I've ever
know.
heard.
Well, talk to Angela. Her grandparents were farmers also. So I just missed I think I missed that. Sometimes the slowness of, or the pace maybe of small town and just
Farming.
There were moments where it was work hard, you hurry up, but there was also just there's a simplicity, just good. There's just salt of the earth kind of people, you know, and not that they're not around here, but I just miss that slowness.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm pretty sure you got that. We got it. All right,
Yeah.
Rob,
Yeah.
you're closer to your youth.
Whoa, that
Yeah.
feels offensive.
It is.
It's funny when you asked the question, I went real dark.
Real quick.
But I was like, you're like, what was the part of your childhood that you missed? I was like, my dad. I don't know.
Come on now.
Well,
That wasn't what I meant.
we call that an ender.
That's why I gave an
I
example.
know,
for
that
joining
was
us
funny.
today.
It was-
Took the room down.
Yeah,
sorry about that. No, that's
Yeah.
not. No, my dad's great. Sorry, Dad. He won't ever listen. Anyways, gosh, I would say there's something really beautiful about like pickup basketball back then.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
play much
dude.
pickup basketball these days, and I don't know. I was always playing basketball as a
Yeah.
kid. Like we had this little like makeshift court at my grandparents' house. My brother and I would just duke it out for hours
all day.
So I do miss that.
Yeah. Angela used to have to come to the basketball court if she wanted to hang out. Like that's how we played ball.
What were you doing there?
Playing basketball.
Oh.
Yeah, you know.
I know.
Cheerleading.
I know. No, Sam can shoot.
Yeah, can he?
Yeah.
If you ever face the pastors on staff at Journey, we might
Yeah, look out.
Lose. Take a game or two.
Oh,
We
yeah.
got a team.
Then we'll get tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll sub out.
Yeah.
At least
We
to
tire
12.
real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam can shoot.
Yep. I thought Sam was going to say something about drinking in the woods, but
Well,
you know.
I mean, those were the good old days.
You said something he misses from
I know,
his child
right? That he doesn't.
That you don't do.
Right. He still does that. Now. That's right. Where's Sam? He's out by the railroad tracks
Just
drinking.
hanging out.
Oh, okay. That way he doesn't miss it
That's
anymore.
right,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Well, did
All
that
right.
go where you thought it was going to go?
I had no idea where
Okay,
that was
all right.
going, but it was. Now I know you better.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Basketball. You do love basketball.
I have not played since COVID, really.
Yeah, it's
I
been
used
a
to
while.
play
Yeah,
quite a bit, but
yeah, and baseball.
Yeah, and I'm maybe the worst basketball player in
Really?
North America. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the most flat-footed shooter that you could imagine.
Okay, fair.
Yeah,
fair,
it's just really bad.
Okay,
really bad.
He doesn't miss basketball.
No.
Good thing is, yeah, not your living. Anyway, so we've been we did a couple of short ones. So if you get a chance to listen to those, please do. Journey on My Mind. But today we're going to talk about the psychology behind deconstruction, and I think it'd be worthwhile just to define that. And when you hear the word deconstruction, what do you hear before we dive into actually what's behind that? So just a quick, when you hear deconstruction, Robert, what do you hear? What do you?
I go back to probably 1920 Rob Bell, Velvet Elvis.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a good reference.
That's kind of the first time I ever
reference,
heard
yeah.
of the concept
Yeah.
of deconstruction. I don't even know if he
Thought about it
used
that
it
way?
that
I don't
way.
think he did.
But he used the example of at the time Christianity being like a brick wall versus what he considered a trampoline, one that you can kind of remove the springs from and it would still kind of work and have some flexibility to it, versus a brick wall where you start pulling some bricks out,
Yeah, it'll
the
fall
whole
down.
thing falls over.
Right.
I
I forgot about that analogy.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
that was
it
that was kind of my first. So I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Deconstruction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sam?
That's interesting because that's probably a similar kind of introductory point. I mean, I think I'd been doing that without the language, or
Okay.
I think there were, just growing up, Church of Christ, there was things in that
Yeah.
stream
That
that
needed
as
to be deconstructed.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
as I got older and through Bible college and just life, I started to ask questions. So I think I was doing that
Yeah.
before I knew what the word deconstruction meant.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. So
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, I think it's anytime you're pulling apart something and examining it, seeing what sticks and what
Yeah.
goes, and sometimes it's a full demo. Like it's
Right.
Some people, their deconstruction ends in
Yep.
there's no house anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And other people, it looks just very different than when it was when they were kids. So
right.
I think we're talking about both things today.
Sure. And do you have you done any of this personally?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been, I don't know timeline, but it's been in different phases where,
right,
Christian school kid, campus ministry guy,
right,
young adult, and then somewhere in there going, wait, I'm not sure about this part,
right?
I don't like what how this is getting represented,
right?
And it's a tricky thing to separate out what parts are the things I just don't believe and what parts are the things that are just bad expressions of a good thing, a cultural kind of misfire or bad expression of it.
Right.
So I think some people when they do this, they land in the I'm chucking the whole thing.
Right.
And other people just kind of emerge in a different looking way.
Well, it's funny because I think maybe a while back when we talked a little bit about deconstruction, we talked about like the idea of, I think when I think about deconstruction, it's kind of I don't want to deconstruct all the way to the foundational piece. I do want to get rid of some of the stuff that maybe is in the way of what makes that foundational piece so beautiful. But a lot of times I think when we see deconstruction now, it's more like demolition. It's like going in and pulling up the foundation. It's just getting rid of all of it. So
plowing it under.
It's become like an identity piece too. Like, I mean, there's podcasts and marketing, media,
evangelicals.
Yeah, and it's kind of this like identity piece that I'm like, I don't know if I fully understand that part. I think if we're honest though, I think the American church kind of lends itself to deconstruction. Like and I think if we're honest, I think a lot of people, whether knowingly or unknowingly, do this because it's consumeristic, right? I don't like this. I like this. I don't like this, right? And so they're doing it, I think, subconsciously at some points. But I think some people, it becomes like from a home project to now I'm a contractor, right? Like this is who I am.
Right.
I get to remodel the bathroom and keep this part.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you in your work. Does this get, even if high school kids, junior high kids don't have the same language for this, what is it that you're seeing in terms of the wrestling with the faith of their childhood to now? Or are you not seeing it yet until they sort of launch off into post-high school?
It's a good question. I think there's definitely a lot of questions, a lot of doubts. I think more often, and it's difficult because it may be this community, we lend itself to curiosity and questions.
This community meaning Journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a generational piece to it, like starting from, I reference my middle-aged generation, the millennials. I think part of a wrestle is, and I think part of the reason like we're wired the way we are is because things just didn't work the way we were told they were going to work,
right?
Whether it's college or jobs or careers or whatever. And so I think as it trickles down to younger generations, I think they're seeing the same and going, man, I don't buy this anymore. And so I think in the post-Christian era that we exist in, right? I think for our students, oftentimes it's questions first. And doubts first, because I think honestly their parents are questioning a lot, and so it's less of this is the way you're supposed to live, and more of parents I think going, I'm not fully sure, but this is what I'm learning, right? Which lends itself I think to curiosity in them.
And that might be more unique to here.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I don't know if that you're going to find. It might be the exact opposite in other.
Churches, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Where it's a push against the parents not questioning and not doubting and not asking the questions.
I would say, and I can't speak obviously for all students in this area, but I think the real challenge that we have in this area is the fact that God is not necessarily needed, like from a financial perspective,
right?
Right, and so there's not really a need to wrestle, so to speak, with faith because it's on the back burner for some people.
Everything's comfortable.
It's easy. Like it's kind of there. I'll accept it. It's fine. I'm a Christian. And so there's not this deep wrestle versus like other communities that may like be struggling with things like food, water, whatever the things are, and there is this intense like, God, are you going to show up or not? So I don't know.
Yeah.
Imagine though if we zoom out then Journey looks different, obviously, than
it does
a lot of other churches.
Yes.
But what's interesting about the bigger macro view is the biggest growing religious group in the U.S. is the nuns.
Nuns,
NES.
Yes.
Not nuns like
Is that what they're
wearing a
called?
Yeah, nuns. Yeah.
Because they check nun
Yeah.
on the survey.
I've seen that movie.
It's that's a sister act.
Freaky.
That's it.
The nun. You're talking about the nun.
Oh, different kind of
God.
nuns.
yeah.
My bad.
I'm so confused.
Yeah. Never mind.
I like this
Somehow I
distract.
knew-
I like this distract reference though.
Yeah.
So
but
that's I think we have to be aware of.
Yeah.
There is a movement toward
Yeah.
an abandonment of faith.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is more accelerated in recent years, recent decade or two than ever.
Right.
So we're not just talking about normal sort of
Right.
kind of trajectory.
No.
We're talking about like a real
It's
acceleration.
sped
of
up,
it.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There
And it's an American phenomena.
very well. We're actually lagging Europe.
True.
Europe did the whole
Yeah.
postmodern
Before we did.
A
check
while
out
ago.
Right.
way before we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're,
That's true.
They're back in the 60s checking out.
Right.
Right. So we're kind of lagging behind that, but
Right.
we're in a place. And here's I've got tons of surveys and things, but one survey that came out said 2/3 of American young adults, so 66%, 2/3
Yep.
who attended a Protestant church on a regular basis say that they dropped out of their faith for at least a year, if not indefinitely, between the ages of 18 to 22.
Yeah.
Now, that's college age, and you're like,
Yeah.
well,
Yep.
they're going to go join a fraternity and party and that kind of
Yep.
stuff, and they'll come back. But that's
they're
a
not.
higher number than usual, where what we're seeing now is there's no
They're not coming back.
return.
It's
Yeah, they're not coming
fascinating
back.
Yeah.
because one of my professors in college talked about this in the 90s. He was projecting that our generation, like Gen X, was the last generation that had roots in the church, like deeply rooted, where
Yep.
it was like you're there 8 times a week.
Yep.
And so during those, like everybody goes and sows their wild oats years, right? Those teen, early 20 years.
Rumspringa.
Right? Yeah,
Back-
Rumspringa.
I love a
It's an
Rumspringa.
Amish
Yeah.
term, but
yeah.
you know.
Indiana again.
But that they would
Corn beans and
that
What you gonna
they
do?
might go do that, but they generally or oftentimes came back to where they were rooted,
Yeah.
right, in their faith, and they wanted that for their kids.
Yeah.
But now but my prof was talking about that, you know, without having those roots, there's nothing to come back to, and I
Right.
think that it's interesting to see that playing out 30 years later, you know,
Yeah.
and he was right.
Well, and the church didn't root people well.
That's right.
Yeah. They were, it turned into, the phenomena of Chicago. When I lived in Chicago for a few years, it was when Willow Creek was on its,
Yeah.
when is that apex.
growing,
It was huge.
Yeah, it was a monster.
Had all kinds of, and it was built on the idea that if you do something entertaining enough, the boomers will come, and they will watch.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't participate, but they'll watch.
Yeah.
And they'll
we'll
do
give
it.
them a show.
Yeah. And it worked.
Mhm.
The church was gigantic.
Yeah.
But it didn't change anything about the way people lived, but it definitely changed the way they experienced church. And I think that's the difference.
And I don't want to speak for him. I think Mike has had a similar experience of
Right.
pastoring a megachurch. Maybe not the same kind of model as Willow
Right.
Creek, but then
Similar.
but
Very
then
similar.
just saying I'm over it.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
It's that model, which is the Walmart
Yeah.
version of church.
Yeah.
Right. Disneyland, yeah,
everything
that's
is
what
bigger,
More like
and
Dollar
better,
General,
and more
but yeah.
available,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're getting
Yeah. And
all
if
the
there's a
right?
smorgasbord that you can come to and take what you want and leave what you don't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we made people really good religious people, but really terrible Christians.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Good members,
Maybe.
Yeah.
maybe on paper,
Yeah.
Sometimes.
right?
Yeah. That's why we've done away with that.
Membership. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's part of our deconstruction.
That is actually
exactly
It's
like
interesting.
churches can deconstruct too.
That's
And
right.
that's an aspect here of deconstruction.
I
Right.
wonder too, like, this is just curiosity. I literally just thought about this, but I wonder how much social media has played into deconstruction.
Huge.
Right, because like I remember
Huge.
when Francis Chan came out. Francis Chan came out with his book, and he was wearing jeans on the platform for the first time, and it was like this massive thing. And he was just down the road from us in Simi Valley,
In where?
in California.
No, what was
Valley.
Simi Valley.
Never heard of
It's a
Simi
city
Valley? Okay.
in
People call it
California.
Simi
Kevin
Valley.
doesn't get out
Maybe
much.
if you're out, or
I've been to California before.
But he was just down the road from us in
Yeah.
Southern California.
Oh.
And I
Thanks
still
for
remember
clarifying.
that my pastor at the time never wore jeans, but then Francis Chan started wearing jeans.
Oh.
And it became acceptable to wear jeans on the platform.
Uh-huh.
And so I wonder
platform.
if
That's funny.
as social media has boomed and we started getting eyes in other communities,
Yeah.
they were going, wait a minute. Like, why are they doing, or why are they not doing
Why
what
am
we're
I
doing?
still wearing a suit?
Or am I, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think caused us not only to compare, but also then question,
Yeah.
yeah.
like, why are we doing this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It shrunk the world in so many ways where
Right.
we can, like so overly connected.
Well,
you know?
and one of the things social media does, for better or worse, is it puts a spotlight on something.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
when the spotlight hits the church and it's like this failing and this failing
Yeah.
and this one and this hypocrisy and so on,
Right.
then the cumulative effect of that is
Forget
this-
it, I'm out.
Yeah.
Well, and that's usually what's focused on.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, oftentimes rightly so.
Right.
But there's also these beautiful things that are happening that aren't quite shined upon so brightly, at times.
So would you say something initially starts the deconstruction process? Do you like
For most people?
Yeah, as humans, like we go,
That's a great question.
That's a
wait
good
a minute,
question, yeah.
like I believe this, but it might not quite be right. I'm going to look at the whole thing. I'm going to look beyond the paneling. I'm going to start looking at the studs. I'm going to start looking at the,
Yeah.
Well, I would say it doesn't have to be an
Event.
event that's horrible and
Okay.
tragic and traumatic. But I do think there's you've been exposed to an idea or exposed to a reality that then makes you back
Kind
up
of triggers
and say,
a thought.
wait
Yeah.
a minute.
wait a minute,
I think that's how mine.
Is that what happened to
I
you?
think so. When I think back about the questions I started to ask were like,
Huh.
and I've shared this, but like when I was at church camp as a 10-year-old, I don't want, because baptism, it's
I thought
magic
you were
in the
trying
water.
to hold a girl's hand at church.
Oh, I
camp.
did that too, but that's
Okay.
a different
That's a
story.
different
We can go
topic.
there later.
Okay, my
We can
bad.
talk about that later.
I
Okay.
married her, by the way.
Okay, well, that's good.
good for you.
Yeah,
Sam.
And then you married Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
I don't even know what I was going to say.
What?
I lost it. Oh no, but I was so in that stream. Baptism it's regeneration. It's magic. You're not saved until you're immersed, right?
Oh.
And so I was at church camp, and I wanted my dad to baptize me when I got home because I had accepted Jesus, and this counselor said, it's okay, but if you die in a car wreck on the way home, you're still going to go to hell.
Whoa!
Right? Okay, so
No way they said that to you?
that was my send off to
Nice.
right. So now,
Wow.
all that
Come
to
back
say,
next year.
That's why you wear a helmet in the
Exactly,
car.
all the time.
I didn't know.
All the time.
Now I know.
Yeah, but it just but that was honestly probably the first time I was like, wait a minute. Like at that young of age, I hadn't deconstructed it or
right.
or moved anywhere, but I
But
started
that
to
doesn't
ask
sound
the
quite
questions.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't land right,
Yeah,
even
yeah.
as a kid,
Yeah,
And so
right.
for me, I can identify that as where I maybe asked my first question about.
So did you get baptized at camp?
No, I did it. I waited and did it. Let my dad do it when we got
Ballsy.
home.
Dangerous.
So,
That's
Dangerous.
ballsy.
yeah,
Right there.
I'm
Yeah.
a little worried about Sam.
Me too. I don't know. Have you been baptized?
Like 74 times. Yeah, every time we screwed up, we thought we had to get rebaptized. Just do it. Just line them up.
Standing water everywhere in
That's
Indiana.
right. Yeah.
I was thinking, I would say, if I was to answer this question, I think hypocrisy had a lot to do with it, which I know exists everywhere.
Pot?
Hypocrisy.
Oh, I thought he said pot.
Hey, just because I'm from California, all right? Come on.
Well, you asked if I'd been there.
Apparently not.
I can't remember.
So he was.
He goes every 6 months, guys. Comes back really refreshed. Anyways,
It smells funny, but he's
no, I think I was part of an AG church post high school.
Mm-hmm.
Had been to a church for 7 years. Almost all of my high school experience was in one small church. And
Would that be in Assemblies of God?
It was, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, AG is Assemblies of God. Before that was non-denominational.
Mhm.
And it was like the gamut of things, right? Like affairs and all the things the pastors were doing. And so I go to this AG church. And what I didn't know, and if you don't know this, my experience in that church, AG is pretty legalistic, right? So I went from a non-denomination to what is, I think, portrayed as like a freedom Pentecostal, like just do, but it's actually really legalistic. And my personality is like, you tell me no, I tend to push back. Not always, I've learned, but as a kid, I was really rebellious, right? So if somebody tells me not to do something, I'm like, why? Right? I'm like, that makes no sense. Yeah. And so that started it. And then again, I think with the postmodern era of the Rob Bells and, you know, I think, who's the other guy? There's another guy that
Jamie Foxx.
No.
No.
He does business now. Anyway,
Clint Eastwood.
McLaren,
all those guys.
Yeah, they're very religious people.
But I found myself in this community that valued things that didn't make sense to me. Right. For example, we had a youth room that was a garage basically, and they would always tell us not to mess up the carpet. Right. We're in youth ministry, and they're like, "Don't mess the carpet." And I was kind of an intern at the time. Don't mess the carpet. Don't mess the carpet. And I'm like, you guys are so concerned about this carpet. What the heck?
Yeah.
Just pull it out.
Yeah.
You know. And so there was this value on things that didn't make sense according to the books and really the Bible that I was reading.
Yeah.
Right.
That I'm going, this doesn't feel right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so when I started reading some of these other authors going, and I think planting seeds of what I think was deconstruction, going, man, these are the things that we have valued that we say really matter, but according to the gospel, it actually doesn't, right? It matters to the American church, but it doesn't matter at all to Jesus. And there was this beautiful song by Todd Agnew. Do you remember Todd Agnew?
Yeah.
It was like Isaiah 6 or something. And he talked about how Jesus would never be welcomed in our church because he would stain the carpet with blood. And I was like,
oops.
Yeah, he wouldn't be welcome in our church. They'd make a fit over the freaking carpet.
Right.
So that kind of planted the seed in me to go, I think there's more to this than what I'm experiencing.
That's very good.
Is there a psychology behind it?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, this is, it's all like, I mean, you know,
I'm just curious.
I have a particular bias, but yes,
right.
It does. And I think
where
we want, I'll tell you, but I'll think where we're going with this is to say,
good catch there. I think
deconstruction can be a good thing. And then how do we respond to that as individuals and as a collective? But I have a hot take on deconstruction.
Yeah, you were going to tell me. Yeah, right. What's your hot take?
Okay.
And I don't know how controversial, but but I'll say the opinions expressed by Dave Verhaagen do not necessarily represent
all of it.
Right. Okay, your discretion is advised.
Hot take.
So when you look up deconstruction online and in books and so on, there are some people that have a very generous view of it and a very like affirmative, like this could be a good thing. And then there are others that are very like this skeptical. Is a bad thing always or nearly always.
Right.
It's always framed negatively and it's framed as kind of a deviation from orthodoxy and so on.
Yep.
All right, here's the hot take.
Okay.
I actually think that many of those people have actually deconstructed themselves. Because I think what...
Many of the anti?
Yes.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean. Because I think that the people that are sort of trying to protect that old, kind of the old guard, are really, in our culture, more of now the culture warriors and the people that are aligning with political ideology and right. And so you hear them talking about things being woke and, and being harsh towards certain groups.
Yeah.
And there's more of an alignment with that sort of political and social ideology.
Yeah.
That actually I think represents a form of deconstruction. I think they've actually migrated over to that's more how they sort of have come to understand faith through a more cultural lens that they assume is orthodoxy. Right. And so that cultural lens, there's emphasis on fighting enemies. There's a de-emphasis on issues of justice and repair and empathy and compassion. You remember we talked about there's a whole movement on how empathy is the worst sin you can imagine, which is an insane idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We all do this, but
it comes out of the political arena, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And picking and choosing what things to emphasize scripturally and what to de-emphasize, a real focus on destruction of certain things rather than the creative kind of making of things, self-serving versus other-serving, seeing the world through these human defined systems of conservative versus liberal or woke versus non and all that stuff. My point is, I think that is a form of deconstruction.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Because I think it is actually deviated from historical faith.
Oh yeah.
In a way that they think this is the authentic faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're not here in this sort of political and social camp, then you've actually kind of gone afar.
Right.
Kind of
You're off
moved
the
away.
You're off the ranch.
So it's almost deconstruction. on
You're
the
in
opposite
Indiana,
ends
but
of
you're
the-
off the
Is there a
ranch.
generational emphasis on any of this? Like, is there a generation kind of leading the charge? I'm just curious.
I think generationally, the first generation that really began to move the needle on deconstruction was the Gen Xers.
Yeah. Starting to ask the questions.
Asking questions and going like, we're the first generation that our standard of living does not equal or exceed our parents, and things don't feel good with kind of the traditional power structures and
I'm a boomer,
all
but
that
I'm sorry. So
Yeah, we know, Kev.
yeah.
I didn't want to put you out there.
My generation wrecked it for everybody.
okay, boomer.
Way to go.
Way to go.
Yeah.
So I think that was the beginning of it. I think Gen Z.
Well, we kind of didn't have anything to lose,
Right.
really, in that sense, right? So, yeah.
Gen Z is the generation though that this is on like accelerant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's
gasoline.
the things that are important to Gen Z are things like racial justice, being kind to sexual minorities, being kind to people that are oppressed. And those are things that are now being framed by sort of the old guard as being woke and deviant from sort of historical faith and all that. And so I think the gap is just getting
Wider.
Yes,
For sure.
I think so.
That's
I
fascinating.
agree with that.
Yeah. I've never thought about it like that, but it's interesting. It's almost like the chips fall and like some are this way, some are this way.
Right.
And yeah.
So what you're saying is the cultural and political makeup of our current status is all Gen X's fault.
Yes.
Okay. It's
Yes. It's all Sam's fault.
Make a note of that.
Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
It's interesting that I am on the cusp here between the boomers and the Xers.
So is Lori. Lori's like right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm literally, depending on how it's defined, because it's fuzzy.
You're 60.
You can go either way.
64, right?
Yeah.
Right in there.
Lori's 65. I'm 63. I am like
You're in
always.
there. Yep.
That's like the last year of the boomers. Yeah.
So the first book I wrote was about Gen Xers, and the guy I wrote it with was younger than me. He was clearly in that cohort, and I was like, I'm sort of
I can kind of play
this sort of
I
sensibility.
can play either camp.
I feel like, you do.
Yeah. Most people think I'm in the Gen X camp.
You feel like it.
Yeah.
You don't feel like a boomer.
But that's thanks to us. We've helped.
yeah.
We've helped bring him that way.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I've been drawn into the dark side. to the younger side. Yeah.
So I think we're agreed that this can be a hard thing, but a good thing.
I think it's necessary. I think
Which part?
I think deconstruction in general of not just faith, but of systems, of things that we encounter in life that we assume. Once you start assuming certain things and you don't ever ask questions of those things, you become indoctrinated into things that maybe you should probably start asking questions of.
Okay, now I got to ask a question. Maybe Dave, you can answer this. But
Maybe I can.
Maybe.
Is there?
Maybe Dave.
Who invited you, Rob?
Well, I'm here now, so welcome.
By the way, we didn't invite Rob. He just
Podcast.
literally sat down and started talking.
This is the Rob Hour with Journey Now podcast.
Journey on my
is
mind.
there a danger to deconstruction?
Yeah.
And because I think what I've experienced, especially post-COVID, whether like in the political spectrum, the deviation from historical faith, or like a lot of my generation, which walking away completely from faith, I think a lot of the deconstruction was happening in isolation. Right, the keyboard
during
warriors.
COVID.
Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah.
And so I think where a lot of the negative kind of stuff came out was you have a lot of these people that are now deconstructing apart from communities, apart from places that I think could help rebuild or reshape.
Yeah.
Because I think
That's good,
I think deconstruction is good. I think reevaluation for me is probably better.
Yeah.
Well, what's the word Susie always untangling?
Yeah.
Or like this.
Yeah, because I think we do that and should do that to everything, right? I think where my experience with maybe even some of my friends where I've seen it's been a complete move away in isolation and complete tearing down in isolation. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there are at least two dangers. First danger is you blow the whole thing up, right? That's one, is that there's nothing, there's no faith there.
Yeah.
The other, though, is that exactly what you're saying is that deconstruction then becomes a sort of like a pile of Legos that you just sort of assemble the way you want, rather than in some context with some sort of guidance and coherent view of that, rather than just like, I don't like this part about fill in the blank, and I like this part, and this part should be part of it, and then I sort of cobble together this Frankenstein faith thing that is okay. I mean, so that's what happened, but it's not necessarily in the same way that we would kind of we think a healthy faith would look.
Like with community, you have people that are kind of helping shape that
and challenging gently and all that.
The thing that's the most dangerous about, in my opinion, and as I've watched people do it, and they reconstruct God, they don't reconstruct their belief system. So they reconstruct this. They create God in an image of what they want God to be, rather than who He is. That's the fear, and that's the fear that a lot of the people that are like, you're just going to do away with God. Well, in many ways, we create God in our own image.
Yeah.
And so that is the struggle. So without a group of people to at least have a conversation around, well, this is, I think God looks like me. Well, I don't think He does. So somebody could say back to me,
I think He does.
Well, I think He's better looking than that. But there's a degree of there's a lack of self-awareness without somebody reflecting back what they hear you say about your faith.
There's a term that I'm gonna get wrong and mess up, and I'll but it's the term that best describes Gen Z's view of God.
Okay,
and it's something like monotheistic therapeutic deity.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
Okay, there's a guy. It's but he's really there in this sort of therapeutic sort of presence and and so that's a social construct. I'm not saying there's nothing about it that's true, but it's very,
but that's not the fullness,
it's not full, and that's what you're describing is I think and this isn't new. People historically have always kind of created God in their in the things that are sort of their own sensibilities,
correct.
And that's why the community piece is important.
Well, I mean, Scrooge talked about iron sharpens iron. Like we have, we do these, we do these things together because we make each other better. And
none of us have it right. Right. I mean, that's the thing. We all grew up in a tradition that's like, oh, we have it right.
What's funny is it's 4 different traditions, I think, too, that we all grew up in. You know?
But they all kind of landed in the like,
we're the ones. We
nailed it. We got it right.
Yeah.
And what we're saying, I mean, I think it's okay to be like, none of us
got it right.
Exactly right, or mostly
that's
right,
true.
or whatever.
Yeah, that's true of Journey too.
Yeah, right. I don't know that we have it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we have to be careful of.
Yeah.
But there's sort of a journey to use that together.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about culturally here.
Yeah.
There's a challenging of, this is how I grew up and thought this.
Right.
What about this other part of scripture that seems to contradict this other thing? There's a lot of sort of give and take and push with a posture of, we're just sort of journeying through this.
Right. Without the idea behind it of, eventually when I tear it all down, I'm going to find out that God's a straw man and He doesn't exist. That's not our assumption. Our assumption is that God is bigger and broader and wiser and beyond what we can imagine. And as we continue to ask the questions and explore this idea of deconstruction, it's just tearing down what our preconceived ideas are of God, and allows God to be the bigger thing.
That's right.
The bigger person, the bigger, rather than this small, insignificant straw man that doesn't exist.
You know, it's interesting. Thinking back to our previous iterations of Journey before, I think the curiosity questions, all those things, I think we were really fuzzy, if I'm referencing a set idea. I found that a lot of our students, like when they left, right, they started going to communities it felt more tangible, I think, to them. So like highly Pentecostal, highly where like, I think because God was so ethereal and so fuzzy and just not really sure, it could be whatever. I think we were kind of, whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't always super clear.
Right.
When they left, there was this like...
They looked for clarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looked for clarity. And so I always found that interesting as a form of deconstruction of like, man, I need something more because what I was given was not enough. I think
because it's not enough to deconstruct.
Yeah.
You have to replace. You're replacing it with something. You're not just deconstructing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're always replacing it with something.
And I think that's what was missing earlier in Journey's story.
Sure.
Was we deconstructed a lot but
didn't give people,
and we did, but we didn't do like the Q&R like we do now, where you actually have a chance to engage it and go back and forth, and that's to me the big difference, you know.
The other thing I was going to say too about Gen Z is I find myself in conversations oftentimes with students wondering what it actually looks like to be Christian, because their view of Christianity is oftentimes reflected in the culture. Yeah. And so they go, if that's what it looks like, I don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If that's what you're asking me to, and I'm like, no, that's not what it looks like. Yeah. But then why does everybody around me that claims to be this look like that?
Right.
And I'm like, dude, it's a great question.
You're like, sorry.
We're trying to figure it out.
Right.
Well, that's actually good. I think that's a good place for where we need to land, which is, so how do you, and particularly for you guys that are in the day-to-day trenches of talking with students and young adults and adults, like what's the response to somebody who's in that deconstruction time or indefinitely in the deconstruction time? How do you enter into that with them?
Sometimes I think it depends on where they're at, maybe in that process. But I always would encourage like not to do this alone. You know, to have people around you that you trust, and that. But also, I think that they started doing it because they got curious about things that didn't make sense, and so I think it's important to press into that curiosity too. You know, but not doing it in isolation. I mean, like you were talking about with COVID and just how that kind of played out. Like I think there was a lot of that happening, and so I think doing that in a community, whether that community is like a few of your friends or it's a trusted person, like, but just don't do it alone. You know. So
yeah, it's a good question. I think at least from a teaching standpoint, we spend a lot of time in the life of Jesus, right? Like it's less about heaven, hell, and more about who Jesus actually is.
Like the gospel story.
Yeah, we spend a ton of time, and then trying obviously to model that with our students. But then I try and leave a lot of space, especially for our older students, to question and just be honest, right? Because that's like I'm okay to hold the space for them if they're questioning, and so I'll oftentimes ask like, "Hey, what do you think about this? We're teaching about Jesus and the disciples, or just the way of Jesus, right?" There's oftentimes questions, and I'll ask like, "Hey, what do you think about that?" And they'll give me the church answer. I'm like, "No, like, what do you actually think?" And they're like, "I don't buy it. I don't buy it." I go, "Okay, well, why don't you buy it?" And then they share, and I go, "Great, let's talk more about that." Not, "Hey, you shouldn't buy it."
That's right.
Right? Or you should buy it, or you're wrong, or that's not the way we do this. Like, I think I trust Jesus enough to know that, one, like, we're all shaping people in our community and our students, right? And that I think there's an element of healthy curiosity that needs to be a part.
Our next topic.
That needs to be a part of the way we do things, even from a student level.
Yeah.
Again, I think there's different parameters for adults versus students, and I think we got to Be mindful of that.
Yeah.
But they need a level of curiosity too, because everywhere else around them, everywhere else is telling them this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
There's a right and wrong answer.
Right.
Right. So if you just go, no, it's just right and wrong. That's it.
Yeah.
They're just going to lose it. It's just not going to.
And a lot of that ultimately comes down to, I hate to say it, but that's a form of behavioral control.
That's right.
Right. It's just like, do these things and you'll be okay. And
that was my experience of Jesus growing up. You know,
right.
I mean, it was more than that, but that was the big piece.
Right.
Act right and you get to heaven. Don't, you go to hell. I mean, that was literally
like
the
boom and boom.
the story. Yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation with a guy. Sorry, random, but I had a conversation with a guy I met. He's an adult now, but we were chatting, and he was telling me about his youth group experience because he found out what I did. And he goes, "I was in youth group once." And he goes, I was hooking up with the pastor's daughter,
Of course. Yeah.
and they kicked me out of youth group because of it. I didn't get to go to the mission trip because of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, to the pastor's daughter, and he's like, no. He's like, and I never went back.
Oh wow.
And I was like, he's like, it always boggled my mind because he's like, I always thought if I was doing these things, he said I was doing all these things, which is true. He goes, why would you kick me out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would you like?
Why not draw me close?
And he was like, I don't understand that. He's like, but it is what it is.
I'm glad you said that story because to me, that's where we need to land too, right?
Yeah.
Is like that we want to be like, come closer
That's
rather
right.
than get your act together or believe these things rightly or whatever. And then
I always heard it put, you don't clean a fish and then catch it, right? You catch the fish, right? So I always thought that
Makes
was an
sense.
interesting. It's just an order piece, right?
I never understood clean the fish. They were in water all the time.
I know.
I just never understood.
never got
that.
it. Sorry.
Dirty
That's
fish.
surprising coming from an ice fisherman.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That's right.
I think we've muddied the water a little more for you. You're welcome to join us in our deconstruction journey, because I think it's just part of faith. I think it's part of faith to ask questions, and as you grow, you're going to ask more questions, and God loves it. So bring the questions, and we will kind of explore where curiosity fits into this the next time. So join us next time on Journey on My Mind. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Later.